So is success measured by EMC as the number of ideas, the number of those ideas that are commercialized, the number that are successful? What's the measure?
So one measurement, which I was told, if you want to measure it from a shareholder perspective, these ideas have generated over $200 million in revenue through the course of the program. Like I said, some of them might be internal services, which can be, help internal users pain points, make their lives easier. So there are a lot of ways to measure the success, but, revenue speaks.
So I have a question because we've heard some today about managing scope, and Matt, it seems like what you're doing with EMC is almost an open call where you're getting 2,200 ideas, and it seems like a lot to sift through. So I have a couple questions. One is, who is evaluating the ideas? What was the makeup of the group? How many people are there? It seemed, and if I caught it right, it sounded like it took a year to do that. And then, so that's question one, I guess. And
yep. So the year was the time that is allowed, or that's hopeful to incubate the product, or the idea and bring it to life. But to evaluate the ideas, so it's run by the offices of the CTO. And the number of people that are on the board, I'm not exactly sure how many people are on it, but I do know that there are a handful of people in the offices of the CTO that evaluate the ideas, and there's also representatives through each business unit, and there's 7 divisions in EMC, a lot of business units. So there's a good amount of people that are bought into it, and again, the size of the board I'm not too sure of, but I do know that there are people that do have kind of a dedicated portion of their job is to evaluate this. If that.
I'm jealous of that iLab. Question about the iLab though. You talked about the different conditions, even though it was a small amount of people, 33 or whatever, that actually did get collaborations. Did you find any differences in the different treatments? You mentioned them, but what were the different treatments, and did they have any?
There's no treatment. So if you think about what we've done, is our control group is everybody else in the same night who could have collaborated with them, as compared to people in the same room.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you manipulated the amount of information in each room.
No, so
all
the
three rooms
information was basically, you got to see the person and then their entire idea. But then what we did is to just even out the probabilities and not to prime too much the room effect, because we're trying to get at the additional information. Everybody in the entire experiment got the same information that was on the poster as well.
Cream, you were having fun trying to get people within medicine to work with each other. Has Callis been doing anything to get people from the different schools, different fields? I mean, we've been experimenting with that here through our School of Technological Entrepreneurship, of trying to get people from different colleges to actually work with each other. So is Catalyst expanding in any way?
Oh, well, I mean, I think the issue with any sort of an intent to foster collaboration is that we just have so much frictions against it. And there's some evidence that, in fact, even when you incentivize collaboration, people will join together just to get the funding, and then they'll work apart. So I think even our effect, even though it's small compared to everything else that exists, what we're showing is that if there's ways. So if you think about what we did, is we collapsed the water cooler conversation that may emerge over a couple of years into 90 minutes. And then we see that effect, controlling for everything else, right? So if you can somehow do targeted research-specific interactions and get people to come around specific topics and have incentives, because all of us are geared towards funding in our academic careers, and have even small amounts of funding available, then I think that should hopefully make a difference. But it has to be, it just can't be random mixtures either. It has to be, in fact, at least what we're saying is that it has to be actually very targeted kind of interventions.
My second question was for Karim. About the stat you had up there about repeat collaboration was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be obviously the biggest number there. Is in your opinion, repeat collaboration healthy? Is the every time somebody repeats with the same group, is there a significant incremental addition to the collaboration, or is it sort of flat compared to the
That's
first?
a great question. We don't know. I mean, I think we didn't see, at least in our data yet, we didn't see any. We evaluated similarly the submissions, and we didn't see an effect of of being in the same room somehow improving the quality of the submission. So, but I think you raised a good question. There's a trade-off between the efficiency you have, because I've worked with you before, we know what we're talking about, we can just go down further and move forward, versus the cost of working with somebody totally brand new and a totally brand new area and so on. So my sense would be that there's probably going to be more failure in the new collaborations, more likely to fail, but the probability of finding an extreme value outcome is going to be higher, because you just remix cooler things. But so that whoever is the sort of the social planner behind this, trying to incentivize this, has to take into account the fact is that with new stuff you'll actually see more failure, but that you should just build that into your equation.
Got a question for Matt. I was involved many, many years ago on a quality circle kinds of programs where we had teams of people looking at ideas and trying to improve them. But one of the factors would be that everybody was trying to get their ideas into this new overlay management process, because they thought that if they could get the idea into that loop, then it would get a higher visibility and approved. So within your business unit, when you're trying to manage the portfolio of ideas that you're using in your business unit, are you finding that people try to drive their ideas over into this new process that's been set up, as opposed to the normal ways that within EMC you would choose which projects you're going to work on?
So with our particular division, we just formed last year. So this is our first time participating in the Innovation Conference, Innovation Challenge. But I have not seen that. People saying, I can't get my idea through the regular channels, let me try this other way. Might be a good idea. But I think that everything is vetted, so I don't think anyone's going to pull a fast one on the office of the CTO committee. And
You'd be surprised.
yeah. But and then also, I mean, it does have to go through the whole program management aspect of things, where it is inspected, verified, and prototypes, and so I think the quality is built into the program. So.
Thanks, Roger Reese from PricewaterhouseCoopers. We heard Professor Von Hippel talk earlier about the user and the individual is so important in the innovation process. So when we talk about collaboration, and I guess it's a question for all three of you, is it really enabling individuals with more knowledge, kind of cross-pollination like your experiment, Karim, or do we really want to drive creativity between individuals and working together? Because it seems like there's almost like an adverseness to really working together. It's like people want more knowledge, they want access to new ideas, but necessarily they don't want to kind of co-create together. So I guess your perspectives on, what should be our goal? Should it be enabling people with information, or really driving, you guys need to work together and come up with creative solutions together?
Let me see.
I have a hard question to you here.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me see. I think that for the pharmaceutical industry, and also I'm looking at in the automobile industry, I think that that there's a little bit of both going on. I don't think it's necessarily that if I am collaborating with a partner overseas that information is enough. I think what the point is that the partner that you collaborate has access to all of that local knowledge and all the local users. So I had a conversation just a little bit earlier with Matt from Continuum, and he was talking about what you were talking about, which was this idea that how do I create a new innovation in in a country which I don't know all the particulars. So if I collaborate or I work with someone in that particular country, they then know a lot about the local information, and that then can spawn what we now are calling reverse innovations. So we're creating we're able to have access to new information than we were before. So I think it's the user and the collaborator, working together. Because before it was just that idea that I could create a new innovation and here in the United States, and I would just send a dummy down version, an emerging market, but we're looking at that a little bit differently. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, if I may add, so I think, and we have some experimental evidence for this as well. I think what happens is that companies establish a routine for how work should get done, and that in itself will sort the types of people that will come into your company in the first place. So in our studies comparing why would somebody go to a team setting which is working on their own in a competitive setting, what we find is that the preference, that people have inherent preference for working on their own autonomously or working in a team. And those preferences are as powerful a motivator for effort as incentives, cash incentives are, almost equivalent. And they're account for 90% of the variation in terms of people exerting effort in these things. And so I think what people forget is that when you establish an organization that's already filtering for the routines and the approaches you have, and you're either going to bring people that are going to be collaborative people or going to be autonomy-seeking people. And then if you change your work routine, if you sort of say, or there's a mismatch, if you put a person that's autonomous in a team, then it's going to be a disaster, or a team person in an autonomy setting, that's going to be, so I don't think there's one perfect way. I think what we have is that we as people have very different preferences depending on the task and depending on the setup of how to work. And I think we need institutions and organizations that can be more flexible instead of saying, all we do is teamwork, and if you're not in a team, you're out of here. And that may also be accounting for, we often see turnover in organizations, like even in the best organizations, we'll see turnover. Some of that may just be that I just don't like this way of working. Like I don't want to be in a team setting, or I don't want to be independent, and I'm being put in a job that's that way. And that may also be explaining exit out as well.
A question for Matt. It looks to me, and it was just my impression, correct me if I'm wrong, that your program to have the employees come up with ideas and innovations were more like individual innovations. Some employee out of the office in some business had this idea and needed to have a tunnel communication channel to come up with it and compete in this kind of competition. Is this right, or is there any effort in the company to try to not only come up with innovation, but with collaborative innovation?
So an example of that, actually, one of my classmates over there, Randy, we were trying to come up with an idea that would leverage EMC's hardware and infrastructure to help struggling students who are looking, paying for web scaling services through Amazon, paying, out of their pocket. We were looking to see if EMC could help kind of subsidize that, or to foster a relationship with some students. So, I mean, so there you go. That's kind of a team. So, I mean, it's not necessarily an individual saying, I have an idea, I'll do this myself. Obviously, you can. I think a lot of the ideas are submitted by groups of people, if that's what you're getting at. And yeah, by all means, I mean, groups of people can obviously submit. So we never did our idea, though. We should.
So for each of you, I wonder if you could just tell us maybe one best practice or thing that, based upon your research, your experience, what companies or what people can do to collaborate better for innovation.
So the point that I touched on in the presentation was just, avoid organizational silence and encourage mutual engagement. So, the engineering kind of groups, they can have some people that aren't very outspoken. They can kind of sit and do their work and have their ideas and keep them to themselves. But I think it's about stimulating that brain power and getting them, using the resources within your company to come up with new ideas, new ways of doing things. That's at least a way of doing things internally.
But the company has to stimulate that, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I would say, and again, this is old news to some degree. Tom Allen at MIT, when he was looking at collaborations at NASA with the NASA contractors in the 70s, in the 60s, in the space program, discovered the Allen curve, which basically showed that collaboration and conversations drop at 70 feet. Right, so you're in an office, 70 feet. After 70 feet radius, you're not going to be talking to anybody else outside of that 70 feet, which is shocking, right? And I don't think that 70 feet has changed much, even in the world of the web and that kind of stuff. So I mean, I think it's really, managers say, oh, I want collaboration, I want collaboration, I want collaboration. It's like, but what are you doing to get people to move around, right? And how do you actually, people have the knowledge and the ideas, and you just can't put up a web forum and hope for collaboration to take place, especially inside of a company. I think that's, again, those would be rare occurrences. And I think taking this information approach and thinking about the search costs and the matching costs and saying, what can we do to move people around so they're actually collaborating, I think will be very important. And that's why I think, what Tim has done and the crowdsourcing stuff is actually remarkable, that you can actually, in a world where you can actually have self-selection and have people pick their own topics and their own projects and their own friends, you see a lot of collaboration go on. But it's still very tiny compared to the population that exists. That's why I think collaboration is still a pretty rare event, and managers need to actually encourage it and celebrate it, and do things about it instead of just putting up a website and making it happen.
I think that from based upon the data that I have right now, I think that it's a little bit of an uphill battle for some particular industries that we sort of, like you touched upon it, Matt, you talked about like centers of excellence in certain kinds of countries. I think we do a good job of collaborating from what I see with centers of excellence and also countries that are similar to us. I think the thing that we don't do a good job of, and we can try to do more, is to try to look at countries or certain areas that are not in our radar. And I think that there tends to be, the reason why that there is not this sharing going on is it's sort of like the relationship is still very hierarchical, and we seem like we're superior to this. Well, we have a lot to learn. So somehow we have to treat our subsidiaries as valuable, and that they might not be in the center of excellence quite yet, but that they're also part of the team. And I think that any idea can come from any place. But right now we're sort of saying that it can just come from these centers of excellence, but maybe that actually there's more than that. Maybe that there's other places that we haven't thought about. So I think just kind of valuing all of that would be a good idea.
Focusing then, rather than on the collaboration, on the innovation. Some of my experience, both working in small companies and some big companies, but I remember the small ones much more fondly, and some experience I had in a region, Pittsburgh namely, where I was part of a group, a task force out of the governor's office looking at how we could be more like Silicon Valley in Pittsburgh. The factors that emerge from that experience that seems one of the most important is the attitude towards failure, and that you can't have innovation in a culture unless there's support for the risks that goes with innovation. And that isn't prevalent in a lot of companies just because the whole reward system is centered around success. You reward success. And I'd love your comments on that.
Yeah, I would say, I think, if you think about the U.S. economy and, why so many countries look at us as sort of this entrepreneurship engine that we have, even in the worst of times, it's because the economy is set up as a massive statistical process, right? In any new industry, any new place, you'll have 30 entrants, 40 entrants. Most of them will fail, right? And you'll have an EMC emerge, right? Or you'll have, a Netscape emerge or something else like that emerge, or a Facebook emerge, because our economy on an aggregate level has the high tolerance for failure amongst entrepreneurship. So there's this cost for failure, of course, and so on, but they get absorbed in, the lessons come through, and so on. And what happens is that in all of these 40 independent experiments, one experiment works out, and then we all reap the benefits. Most companies just don't have the mindset or have the tolerance for that level of failure inside their organization. So you'll basically, for any particular project, you will have one attempt, right? So statistically, you'll get the average, and the average may not be good enough for you to get the best solution. And so in some ways, you can just reduce innovation down to this very bare, and we can have a lot of stuff. Oh, we need teams, we need collaboration, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, how many shots on goal are you taking, and do you have enough shots on goal? And can you tolerate organizationally there's many failures, and there's no penalty for risk taking inside the company.
I'm actually excited about the topic that you mentioned. I'm really interested in failure myself. I actually am starting to look at that in my database right now, particularly at the clinical trials, because so many clinical trials do fail. I don't have the statistics to support this right now, but what I can see is that it seems as though that failure opens the opportunity for firms to consider different alliances and different relationships that they hadn't considered before. So I can't give you specific numbers. I'm working on that, but it seems as though that failure, maybe firms don't like it, they don't want to do it, but it appears as though from the glance right now, it appears as though it's allowing them to get into other types of drugs, or work with different types of partners, or explore different kinds of avenues than they had explored before, because it's very hard, and you can kind of see it in the data set. You can kind of see that certain partners work together all the time, and they have a history of doing this. And why dismantle that? Why break that up? Because in the literature we know it's hard to, even if we get a collaborator, it's hard to have a good one, or one that, and we know that joint ventures fail like 75% of the time, or mergers and acquisitions don't work. So, it's hard for us to want to try something new. So when we get something and it works, it's good. But in this situation, it seems like failure gives them an opportunity to try something new. But I haven't been able to publish anything with that yet, but I hope to.